Hi guys, Dr. Vic here again. Have you ever noticed how when someone says they studied philosophy, art history, gender studies, or theology, there's a polite nod, then a quick mental calculation about how much money are you going to make with that? I've experienced that myself. So I did my PhD in the Department of Religions, and it incorporated gender studies and also critical social theory and cultural studies. And everybody thought I was mad, and they still probably do. And I'm here to explain to you how crucial these kind of subjects are for human progress. So we've learnt to underestimate the value of culture, politics, religion, and society. We treat the study of people as a frivolous luxury. But I've worked in conservation and I know that if you ignore the human dimension, your science fails, your conservation project doesn't work out. You damage people, you sow injustice, even if you meant well. So today I'm going to argue that we desperately need the humanities, not as virtue signalling or a tick box exercise, but as the backbone to all education, especially in fields that shape our future. So let's start by looking at what's happening to humanities enrolment. And when I talk about humanities, I mean English, history, politics, culture studies, anthropology, all of those subjects. So let's dig in. Over the last decade and probably longer, the humanities have been shrinking, not because they're less meaningful, but because our system has decided that they're less marketable. In the US, humanities enrolments have declined by over 17%. In the UK, the proportion of students in humanities subjects dropped from 28% in 1961 and 62 to just 8% in 2020. So these numbers don't just reflect shifting tastes, they reflect a shift in how we frame education as an investment, as return, as utility. This is the logic of neoliberalism. Every choice is reduced to cost benefit, every value equated with monetary value. If a degree can't pay back in job prospects, it's dismissed. What's lost in this framing is everything you can't measure: ethics, critical thought, cultural imagination, empathy, and social justice. So, as philosopher Martha Nussbaum memorably puts it, knowledge is no guarantee of good behaviour, but ignorance is a virtual guarantee of bad behaviour. In a society that prizes profit above all, the humanities become vulnerable, not because they're weak, but because their strengths are invisible to the profit lens. So here's the irony. When employers talk about skills gaps, they rarely say we need more history scholars or theologians. They talk about soft skills: communication, ethics, critical thinking, creativity, and guess where they come from? Many employers rank critical thinking, ethical judgment, writing, and adaptability among their top most desired skills. In fact, some internal studies by tech firms have shown that employees with humanities or liberal arts backgrounds often bring perspective, nuance, and the ability to question assumptions. Precisely the kinds of abilities that you need when AI, biotech, or climate science become morally fraught. So the system ridicules the humanities as soft, but when you peel back the layers, those soft skills are often the hardest and most indispensable. If we think back to classical and ancient Greece, they didn't separate science from ethics, engineering from philosophy. Education was holistic. The great thinkers of the Western tradition, Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, saw that you cannot live well by technology alone. You need wisdom, you need virtue, you need a sense of justice. They taught mathematics, astronomy, medicine, grammar, rhetoric, ethics, history, all together in conversation, because they understood that knowledge and character must go hand in hand. That model is deeply alien today. We've kind of soiled the system. We've focused on STEM and it centers on mere ideas. We chase this specialization at younger and younger ages. But when you remove the humanities, you remove moral imagination, cultural awareness, and the capacity to ask, what does it mean to live? And what does it mean to live well? In today's world, genetics, AI, climate engineering, if you don't cultivate that capacity to ask about justice and consequences, you're building without a compass. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not advocating that every engineer spends half of their time writing poetry or doing a module on interpretive dance, although that might be quite fun. Rather, I'm arguing that every discipline should embed humanistic thinking and do it organically. So think about some examples here. A genetics program should include the philosophy of science, bioethics, the history of medicine. An AI curriculum should require coursework in epistemology, social justice, critical race theory, so developers can anticipate bias and the harm that their technology and plans are going to do for society. They can imagine what kind of inequality this is going to manifest. In conservation projects, you've got to integrate anthropology, post-colonial studies, local religions, cultural knowledge, or else you run roughshod over communities, especially in biodiversity hotspots. And this was something I know and my own experiences. I was working in conservation and I ended up in situations where I was willfully ignorant of the cultures and the religions and the influences of those people that were stakeholders in the conservation work that I was doing. You can have the best ecological plan, but if you ignore the human side of it, these colonial legacies, the land rights, the cultural values, you end up harming communities and undermining legitimacy. So embedding the humanities means weaving them into the fabric, not appending them. It's like how all teachers have to embed literacy and numeracy into their schemes of work now. We should really be thinking about how we embed ethical literacy and cultural literacy. It should teach students not just how things work, but why they work and for whom they are working. So why does any of this matter for the future? And it's simple. It's because technology, policy, and science, they're not neutral. Every tool, every intervention carries values with it. Someone chooses what to optimize, what to include, whom to silence. If we're trained only in techniques without moral imagination, we're handing the control to the blind. So, the humanities, it helps us to see the person in front of us, not just the data points. It enables us to resist manipulation, misinformation, propaganda. It equips us to ask, is this progress just? Is this innovation safe? Is it fair? And it helps us to cultivate empathy, solidarity, and social cohesion. Without them, we risk producing technically brilliant but morally hollow leaders. We live in a moment when AI, gene editing, climate engineering, data surveillance, they're advancing faster than our public discourse. We need people capable of critical foresight, and the humanities are the place we build that capacity. So here's what I'm proposing. We've got to reframe the humanities not as a luxury, but as absolutely foundational. We've got to resist tokenism and insist that the humanities are embedded in all curricula. We must fund them and defend them and publicise their value. And we've got to teach students not just to do, but to think about what doing means. I believe that what distinguishes us as human is not primarily our tools or our output, but our capacity to reflect, to empathise, to imagine justice and dignity. The humanities are the training ground for that capacity. If we lose them, we don't just lose disciplines, we lose the very ability to ask, what kind of world do we want? Let's fight. Let's fight to rebuild education around wisdom, not just utility and money and what kind of jobs we're going to get at the end of it. Because the future doesn't just need more professionals, it needs people who care. So that's it for today. I'll chat to you soon. See you next week. Bye bye.